On the wild, rugged landscape of the American West, where the heat from the sun burned the earth and the land seemed endless, there lived an Apache girl named Tala. She was unlike any other in her tribe. Fierce and strong, Tala had become known far and wide for her ability to track animals, her skill with a bow and arrow, and her spirit that never broke, no matter the challenge. The warriors of the Apache tribe admired her greatly, but there was one thing they could never understand. Tala did not seem to care about their strength, their fighting skills, or their battle honors. Tala was a warrior in her own right, but her heart was not swayed by just strength. The other warriors, young and old, were determined to win her favor. They competed in battle, showing their skills with weapons, hunting, and even strength challenges. Yet Tala would watch quietly, a faint smile on her lips, but her heart remained indifferent. One day a great contest was announced. Tala would decide which of the warriors was worthy of being her man, her partner in both battle and life. 12 of the greatest warriors in the tribe prepared to face each other, each eager to prove that they were the strongest, the bravest, and the most deserving of Tala's heart. The whole tribe gathered around in anticipation, watching the 12 warriors prepare themselves. They were a sight to behold, muscles rippling as they sharpened their weapons, their faces set in serious, determined expressions. Tala, seated at the center of the gathering, was silent. She watched with a calm expression, as though all this excitement meant nothing to her. The warriors, unaware of her thoughts, continued their preparations, each one hoping to be the last man standing. They performed their tasks with incredible skill. Some showed off their archery, others displayed their strength by lifting massive stones or wrestling with one another. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they competed, each one trying to outdo the other. But as the contest grew more intense, Tala's gaze began to wander. She wasn't looking at the warriors anymore. Her attention shifted to something else, something far more intriguing. In the distance, she saw a figure walking quietly toward the gathering. It was a man, but not one of the warriors. This man was different. He wore no armor, no weapons. His clothes were simple, worn from long days of travel. His face was rugged yet kind. His eyes didn't have the fierce glint that all the warriors seemed to possess. Instead, they carried a calmness, a peace, as though he had seen and experienced things that none of the warriors could ever understand. The man, a cowboy named Jack, had wandered into Apache lands unknowingly. He was far from his home, lost in search of something he didn't even know. He had no intentions of competing with the warriors. In fact, he hadn't even known there was a contest. Jack had been traveling for days, his horse tired, his mind heavy with the weight of the past. He had left behind a life filled with violence and loss, hoping to find peace in the solitude of the wilderness. Tala couldn't help but be drawn to him. There was no grand display of strength, no fierce challenge for her heart. He simply stood there watching the competition unfold. His presence was calm, unbothered by the chaos around him. Tala found herself intrigued. The 12 warriors, so focused on proving their worth, had missed the one thing that stood out to her. As the competition came to an end, with the warriors panting and sweaty from their efforts, Tala stood up. The entire tribe fell silent, their eyes on her as she moved to the center. The warriors looked on with anticipation, each of them believing they had earned the right to be with her. But Tala, with a calmness that stunned them all, pointed her finger directly at Jack, the cowboy standing quietly in the back. A murmur of confusion spread through the crowd. The 12 warriors, still catching their breath, exchanged surprised looks. They had been so certain that they would win her favor. Some of them were angered, others were confused. They had fought hard, displayed their might and skills, and now they were being passed over for a man who had not fought at all. Tala looked at each of them with calm eyes, her voice cutting through the silence. "You have all shown great strength," she said softly. "But strength alone is not what I need. It is peace I seek. It is understanding. And this man," she said, nodding toward Jack, "he understands that." The warriors, their pride wounded, watched as Jack stepped forward. He had no idea what was happening, but he felt the eyes of the entire tribe on him. Tala had chosen him, and though he was not a warrior, he knew in that moment that this was a different kind of fight, a fight not for strength but for something deeper. The warriors who had competed so fiercely now stood in stunned silence. Tala had chosen Jack not because of his strength, but because of his peace, his calmness, and his ability to simply be in the moment. In a world where everyone was fighting to prove themselves, Jack had not been fighting at all. He had been simply existing, watching, learning, and respecting the world around him. Tala's choice was bold, and it wasn't one that everyone understood. But to her it made perfect sense. The strength of a warrior could win many battles, but it could never win the heart. The peace and wisdom of a man who understood the land, the people, and the way of life was what truly mattered. And in Jack, Tala saw that understanding. She saw someone who could stand beside her not just in battle, but in life. The crowd slowly began to murmur, some with admiration, others with resentment. The 12 warriors had been bested, but not by force. Tala had chosen Jack because he represented something none of them could offer, a quiet, humble strength that spoke louder than any weapon. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, Tala and Jack stood side by side, and the warriors, though defeated, began to realize that perhaps there was more to strength than they had ever understood. The days following Tala's decision were filled with whispers among the Apache tribe. The warriors who had fought so hard for her heart were confused and hurt, but they knew better than to challenge Tala. The Apache people respected strength. Yes, but they also respected wisdom, and Tala had made her choice clear. Jack, the lonely cowboy, had never expected to be part of this world. He had come to these lands seeking peace, far away from the chaos of his past. He had no weapons, no armor, and no intention of competing with anyone. Yet, Tala had chosen him. She saw something in him that the warriors could not see in themselves. Jack didn't feel like he belonged in the Apache world. He had lived a hard life, and he wasn't sure he had much to offer. He wasn't a skilled warrior, nor did he know the ways of the Apache. His knowledge of the land was simple, learned from years of traveling through vast, untamed wilderness. But it was enough for Tala. And as the days passed, Jack began to understand why. One morning, Tala approached him. She was different now. Not the fierce warrior of the contest, but someone softer, yet still strong in her presence. She had a way of moving through the world that made people stop and pay attention. "We will go to the sacred mountain today," Tala said, her voice calm and steady. "You will learn about my people, Jack. You will learn what it means to walk with the land, to listen to its heartbeat." Jack nodded, unsure of what to expect, but he trusted her. He followed her through the wilderness, the quiet, gentle landscape of the Apache homeland. They walked for hours, and as they walked, Tala spoke to him about the stories of her people, their struggles, their victories, and their deep connection to the earth. She spoke of their ancestors, of the battles they fought, and of the sacrifices they made to protect their way of life. Jack listened carefully, the words sinking deep into his soul. He had always lived a solitary life, and though he had seen much of the world, he had never truly understood the connection that people had to the land they lived on. But as Tala spoke, he began to understand. There was a rhythm to the earth, a pulse that could be felt if one knew how to listen. The Apache understood it, and now, for the first time, Jack was beginning to. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the land, Tala stopped at the base of a towering mountain. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth. She turned to Jack, her eyes reflecting the light of the fading sun. "This mountain," she said softly, "is sacred. It is where my people go to connect with their ancestors. We come here when we need guidance, when we need strength. The earth speaks to us here." Jack, moved by her words, looked up at the mountain. It stood tall and silent, as though it had witnessed centuries of history. He felt a strange pull, a desire to understand, to be part of this place, but he knew he wasn't one of them. He was an outsider. Tala seemed to read his thoughts. She stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "You may not be a warrior, Jack, but you are strong in ways that others do not see. Strength is not only in the arms that wield a bow or the legs that run fastest. It is in the heart that knows when to stand firm and when to bend with the wind. It is in the spirit that listens." Jack didn't say anything at first. He had always believed that strength was about fighting, about surviving. But Tala was showing him a different way of life, one that wasn't about domination, but about respect. Respect for the land, respect for others, and respect for oneself. As they sat at the foot of the mountain, Tala shared more stories of her people. She spoke of their hardships and their triumphs, but also of the quiet moments, the times when they gathered around a fire, shared their thoughts, and listened to the night. She told Jack about the warriors of the past, how they fought fiercely, but also how they knew when to lay down their weapons and be at peace. Jack listened intently, feeling a connection to the land and the people in a way he had never felt before. He wasn't just a stranger passing through. Tala had brought him into her world, and he was starting to understand the deeper meaning of it all. The next day, the two of them traveled further into the mountains, where Tala showed Jack the sacred places of her tribe. They visited caves painted with ancient symbols, their walls telling stories of the past. Jack was amazed by the beauty and the history that surrounded him. These were not just places. They were the heart of the Apache people, their soul embedded in the earth. Tala then took Jack to a small stream where the water flowed clear and cold from the mountain. She knelt beside it, dipping her hands into the water and letting it run between her fingers. She invited Jack to do the same. "The water is life," she explained. "It nourishes us, it cleanses us, and it connects us to the world around us. The earth gives us everything we need. All we have to do is listen." Jack knelt beside her, dipping his hands into the cold stream. As the water flowed through his fingers, he felt something shift inside him. It was as if the earth itself was speaking to him, telling him that he was part of something much greater than himself. He was part of this land, part of this people, and though he wasn't born to it, he had found a place here. Later that day, Tala and Jack returned to the village. The warriors who had once fought for Tala's heart watched from a distance, still unsure of what to make of Jack. But the elders, wise and patient, saw the bond that had formed between them. They understood that it was not strength alone that mattered, but the understanding of the world and the people around you. Tala had made her choice, and Jack had proven himself in ways that no warrior ever could. The quiet strength he had shown, his willingness to learn, and his respect for the Apache way of life had won her heart. The tribe slowly began to accept him, not as an outsider, but as one of their own. Jack had found a new purpose here, not as a warrior, but as someone who could walk beside Tala, understanding the land, the people, and the ways of life that had been passed down through generations. The warriors, once proud and full of pride, saw Jack in a new light. He wasn't the strongest nor the most skilled with weapons, but he had something that they lacked, a connection to the earth and a heart that could understand the deeper meaning of strength. As the seasons changed and the land shifted with time, Jack and Tala grew closer. Together, they faced the challenges of the world, not with weapons and force, but with understanding, respect, and love for the land that had brought them together. And in that love, they found strength that no battle could ever defeat.